In a tense scene, a ranch is surrounded by flashing police cars, and a woman accuses the rancher of hiding something. The man, calm and unwavering, reveals that he has a $100 million insurance policy protecting his property. As the community faces challenges, the ranch becomes more than just a piece of land. It's a symbol of legacy and unity. The story explores whether kindness can overcome greed and protect what matters most. The journey is not just about fighting for land, but about standing up for what is right, showing that when a community comes together, they can overcome even the darkest forces. As the sun began to set over the vast expanse of the ranch, a group of law enforcement officers arrived on scene. They were investigating a series of bizarre occurrences that had plagued the area for weeks. Strange noises coming from the surrounding fields, and an eerie silence that seemed to follow them wherever they went. The community was gripped with fear as rumors began to circulate about a mysterious figure rumored to be hiding something valuable in one of the ranch's hidden vaults. One day, while searching through abandoned buildings along the perimeter, the officers discovered a locked metal door nestled deep within a nearby cave system. Inside, they found an old and dusty insurance policy belonging to the owner of the ranch, Keiko Sato Lucianbacker, which bore an ominous message. In case of unforeseen events, I have purchased this valuable coverage to protect my property from any potential loss. The officers were taken aback by the significance of the discovery and decided to follow up with Keiko Sato. They approached him cautiously, their hearts pounding in fear as they recognized his sharp jawline and piercing gaze that seemed almost supernatural. "What is it you are hiding?" asked Detective Jack, a seasoned investigator who had been part of this case before. "What do you mean by unforeseen events?" Keiko Sato's demeanor remained calm but firm. "It's not about the loss itself. Rather, it's the power and influence that comes with my insurance policy." He hesitated for a moment before continuing, his voice barely above a whisper. "The ranch has become more than just a piece of land. It represents my family's legacy and symbolizes unity among our community. But recent events have shown me that greed can corrupt even the most powerful individuals." Detective Jack raised an eyebrow in disbelief as he listened to Keiko Sato speak. "What do you mean by recent events?" He had seen firsthand the struggles of the local economy due to the pandemic's impact and how it affected small businesses. The community was struggling to make ends meet, with many losing their livelihoods and homes. "I believe that one person's greed has caused a ripple effect that threatens our very existence," Keiko Sato continued. "A thief stole my ranch insurance policy from me last week, leaving behind an empty vault. It seems like the perpetrator had enough of what we were working so hard for to take it all." Detective Jack furrowed his brow in confusion. "So you're suggesting someone has stolen your property and is using its value as a shield against any potential losses?" Keiko Sato nodded grimly. "Yes, that's my theory. The thief seems to have taken advantage of our community vulnerability during these challenging times when resources were scarce, and the fear surrounding the pandemic had made people more cautious than usual." Detective Jack raised his hand in recognition before turning back to Keiko Sato. "I see your point. We'll need a thorough investigation to determine if this is an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern. The police must work together with local authorities to identify the thief and recover my insurance policy, which could be crucial for our community's survival." Keiko Sato nodded understandingly. "Yes, we do indeed need to take action. But before that, I want you to understand why this matters more than just protecting property. Our ranch is not only a symbol of our family history, but also the heart and soul of our town. It represents hope in an uncertain future where many families have lost their homes due to economic hardships. Detective Jack's expression softened as he looked at Keiko Sato with, "I understand your perspective, Keiko Sato. Let me assure you that we are taking this case seriously and working tirelessly to find the thief and recover my insurance policy." He turned back to the police officer, who nodded in agreement. "We'll do whatever it takes to bring those responsible to justice," he said. Determination etched on his face as he led them away from the ranch. As they walked into darkness, Detective Jack couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had settled over him and the others within their ranks. Ending, tense scene. A rugged ranch is situated at the edge of a vast, sprawling valley. The sun beats down on its thick walls and lush greenery that reaches up towards the sky like a canvas painted with hues of gold and rust. As the police officers arrive, they are greeted by flashing red lights illuminating the entrance to the compound. They step into the dimly lit room, where a somber atmosphere hangs heavy in the air. Detective Jack, his eyes fixed on Keiko Sato, stands at the head of the team, a determined look etched on his face. The rancher, Tom Malik Nyberg, appears before them, sitting cross-legged beside a rusted desk with shredded documents scattered around it. His hands are shaking as he looks up from the desk. "I know what you're thinking," Keiko says softly, her voice tinged with fear and desperation. "But please believe me when I tell you that my insurance policy is not just some valuable piece of paper. It's our livelihood and a source of financial security for generations to come." Tom hesitates, his eyes scanning the room for any clues or leads. Suddenly, he looks up from the desk and sees an old wooden crate sitting on one side of the table. He raises an eyebrow, intrigued by its presence. "Are you referring to this?" he says, pointing at the box. "The insurance policy? That's been missing for weeks now." Detective Jack nods, his eyes narrowing as he studies the contents within. The package is wrapped in Aden Curry paper and bears a logo that reads Malik Nyberg Insurance. He carefully opens it up, revealing a thick portfolio filled with documents related to various policies, including personal accident coverage, life insurance, disability benefits, and property damage claims. "Seems like someone's been trying to cover their tracks," Detective Jack says, his voice low and steady. "But who? And why would they take the time and resources to go through all this?" Keiko takes a deep breath before continuing her explanation. She explains that she had recently received an insurance claim for damages caused by a faulty septic system at her ranch in town. The loss of several valuable livestock, including horses, cattle, and chickens, led to significant financial losses, making it difficult to maintain the ranch's operations. To cover these expenses, Tom purchased a new policy from Malik Nyberg Insurance, but discovered that some of the documents had been tampered with. He began investigating the case further, questioning employees and neighbors about any suspicious activity or inconsistencies in their statements. As he delved deeper into the investigation, Detective Jack encountered several obstacles. The local authorities were tight-lipped about the incident, and Tom's insurance company refused to provide any information about potential threats or suspects. Moreover, his personal life was thrown into turmoil as rumors swirled about a possible motive for the theft. It wasn't until Keiko stumbled upon an old letter from her estranged husband that the truth began to unravel. The letter revealed that he had been embezzling funds from Tom's insurance company and had fled town with their children, claiming he needed money to save them from financial ruin due to a failed business venture. Detective Jack knew then that this case was far more than just an insurance policy theft. It involved betrayal, deception, and the lengths one would go to protect themselves. He arranged for a private investigation into his husband's activities, gathering evidence, and interviewing witnesses. As he dug deeper, Detective Jack uncovered a web of deceit and greed that spanned several years. It was discovered that Tom had been using company resources to cover up his own financial troubles while hiding the truth from his estranged wife, their children, and other employees. The theft not only threatened Keiko's livelihood, but also her family's future. With each new piece of evidence collected, Detective Jack became increasingly convinced that Tom's actions were criminal in nature. He knew that he had to bring him to justice before it was too late for anyone else on the ranch or town at large. As they made their way back to the police station, Detective Jack and his team confronted Tom with overwhelming facts and evidence of his guilt. The rancher initially denied any wrongdoing, but eventually broke down in tears when faced with the evidence. He confessed that he had been driven by greed, desperation, and a desire for control over his financial situation. He knew that if left unchecked, this would have devastating consequences not just for himself, but also for those around him who relied on Tom's insurance policies to provide a stable source of income and security. As the police arrested Tom, Detective Jack couldn't help but reflect on the tragic story he had uncovered. His encounter with Keiko Sato had sparked an intense emotional response that led him to confront his own biases and assumptions about what constitutes good or evil. In the end, justice was served, and Tom's actions were deemed a form of theft not just for himself, but also for those whose livelihoods depended on his insurance policies. The rancher would be sentenced to prison for his crimes, and Keiko Sato could finally breathe a sigh of relief knowing that her life had been saved from the same threat it posed years ago. The incident had brought renewed hope in their community, as they acknowledged the importance of protecting not just one's assets, but also those who rely on them. Detective Jack left the ranch with a heavy heart, his mind brimming with questions and challenges he would face in the future to ensure that such incidents did not happen again. As he walked out into the sunset, Detective Jack knew that this case had served as a catalyst for change within their town, inspiring others to be vigilant against any form of financial exploitation or manipulation. The legacy of Tom Malik Nyberg's greed and deception would forever remain etched in the hearts of those who had been impacted by his actions. In a small, remote ranch nestled in the heart of rural America, Tom Malik Nyberg had always been known for his fierce determination and unwavering commitment to protecting those who relied on him. But when he uncovered a secret that threatened not only his own financial security, but also the livelihoods of countless families nearby, Tom's once carefree demeanor gave way to fear and desperation. As Detective Jack, an experienced investigator with a keen eye for detail and a passion for justice, arrived at the ranch the following morning, he found the scene of horror as it was. The sprawling property stretched out before him, its lush green fields surrounded by rows upon rows of cattle and horses grazing in the golden sunlight. But unlike usual, there were no signs of life on the surrounding streets or nearby farms. Only a small police station tucked away at the end of the drive, with cars parked outside and sirens blaring. Tensions ran high as Detective Jack made his way to Tom's cabin, where he encountered Keiko Sato, the rancher who had been accused of hiding something. The woman was sitting on a wooden bench in the living room, her hands shaking violently as she told Detective Jack about how Tom had taken her insurance policies and sold them off without telling anyone. "I don't know what you're talking about," Keiko gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Tom's been my partner for years. He wouldn't do anything to harm our family." Jack listened intently as the rancher recounted how Tom had approached him one day with a proposal that seemed too good to be true. He would sell his insurance policies and split the profits equally between himself, Keiko, and their 2 children. The rancher was initially hesitant but convinced by Tom's persuasive words, believing that selling off their assets could provide them with some much-needed financial stability. But as they began to explore the options and make plans for a new life together, it became clear that Tom's greed had taken over his once clear conscience. He started funneling money into himself instead of investing in the ranch or its employees' well-being, using their insurance policies as an excuse to buy luxury items he couldn't afford with his own savings. With time passing and the fear growing within Keiko and her family, they began to notice a pattern emerging. Tom was making off with large amounts of cash from their accounts each week without telling anyone. They tried to confront him about it multiple times, but he always dodged them, evading any investigation or prosecution that might bring the truth to light. As Detective Jack continued his pursuit of evidence and interviewing witnesses, he discovered more clues that pointed towards Tom's deceitfulness. A bank statement showing suspicious withdrawals from different accounts, records of canceled insurance policies with no explanation for their absence, and even phone calls made in the presence of multiple people who were unfamiliar with Keiko or her children. It wasn't long before Detective Jack began to suspect that Tom was involved in an elaborate scheme, one that would not only damage his reputation, but also put countless lives at risk. He knew he needed to act fast, as the consequences of this crime could be severe for both Tom and those who had been affected by him. As the days turned into weeks, Jack delved deeper into Tom's past, tracing back his financial transactions and uncovering a web of lies and deceit that threatened not only their own lives, but also that of countless others. He found evidence linking Tom to illegal activities, including money laundering and fraud, and began gathering witness statements from individuals who had been victims. With the help of Keiko's children, Detective Jack gathered all the necessary information and presented it to a state prosecutor. The case against Tom Malik Nyberg took off like wildfire, with charges ranging from theft to financial abuse, as the evidence mounted in his favor. But when he arrived at court for his trial, Tom was nowhere to be found. He had vanished into thin air without leaving any trace or even a message that could explain his whereabouts. As Detective Jack delved deeper into this mysterious figure's life, he uncovered a secret that would forever change the course of their investigation. Tom had been working with an organized crime network operating in the area, using his expertise and influence to cover up his crimes and evade capture. In a stunning revelation, Jack discovered that Tom was not just guilty of theft, but also of leading a criminal enterprise that threatened the very fabric of society. He had been exploiting vulnerable individuals for personal gain, while simultaneously profiting from their financial vulnerability, creating a system where power corrupts and greed prevails at any cost. As Detective Jack presented his findings to Judge Keiko Mancini, he could feel the tension in the courtroom mounting as Tom's lawyers tried to defend him against the charges brought against him. But with each passing day, it became clear that justice was on their side. The evidence against Tom had proven beyond a shadow of doubt, and he would be held accountable for his crimes. In an emotional address delivered before Judge Keiko Mancini, Detective Jack described how this case had served as a wake-up call for the community, inspiring them to take action against financial exploitation and corruption. He highlighted the importance of protecting those who relied on their livelihoods from individuals like Tom Malik Nyberg, who used their trust and vulnerability to make themselves rich at their own expense. As Judge Keiko Mancini sentenced Tom to prison for his crimes, he couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over him. This case had not only exposed the greed and corruption that threatened countless lives, but also brought renewed hope within their community, highlighting the importance of vigilance, education, and support in fighting against such threats. For Jack, this was not just about bringing an end to Tom's reign of terror. It was a chance for justice to be served and a reminder that no one should ever fall victim to someone like him. As he walked out of court with his head held high, Detective Jack knew that the legacy of Tom Malik Nyberg would live on as a testament to the power of vigilantism and the importance of protecting those who were vulnerable. It was up to others in the community to carry on his fight against financial exploitation and corruption, inspired by this harrowing case and determined to make their own voices heard. For Jack, justice had been served not only for Tom, but also for countless other individuals whose lives have been shattered by greed and deception like he once did. With a heavy heart, Detective Jack left the ranch, his mind brimming with memories of the challenges that lay ahead in his quest for justice and the lessons it would teach others. The legacy of Tom Malik Nyberg's greed and deception would forever remain etched in the hearts of those who had been packed by him, serving as a stark reminder of the importance of protecting not only one's assets, but also those who rely on them. In a dark and stormy night, the police department received an urgent call from Detective Jack, who was on high alert after receiving information that Tom Malik Nyberg, the notorious rancher with a history of financial exploitation, had fled his rural home. The news spread like wildfire across town as residents gathered at various locations to gather more evidence against him. As Jack made his way through the streets, he saw flashing lights and police cars racing towards the scene. He knew that it was time for action, but also that justice wouldn't come easily. As he arrived on the scene, he was greeted by a throng of journalists, photographers, and law enforcement personnel. The rancher's house stood tall and imposing against the backdrop of rain-soaked trees, its windows shattered in various places. It seemed as if the police had been called upon to confront Nyberg once again. Jack entered the premises cautiously, his mind racing with thoughts about how he could gather evidence without setting off any alarms or alerting potential witnesses. He made a mental note to stay low and move slowly around the property, keeping an eye out for any signs of security footage or clues that might lead him closer to Nyberg's hideout. The rancher was nowhere to be found within minutes, leaving Jack with no choice but to continue his investigation into his alleged financial crimes. As he delved deeper into Tom Malik's past and the ways in which he had exploited people for personal gain, it became clear that there were more hidden layers than just a simple theft. Jack discovered that Nyberg had been involved in numerous illegal activities over the years, from embezzlement to money laundering to insider trading. He had managed to create an elaborate network of shell companies and trusts that allowed him to hide his wealth while still maintaining access to large amounts of capital. The sheer amount of money he had accumulated was staggering, but it wasn't just about financial gain. Nyberg also used his power as a rancher to control the lives of those around him. Jack's investigation led him to discover that Tom Malik was not only wealthy and powerful, but also deeply corrupt. He had taken bribes from politicians, business leaders, and even law enforcement officials in exchange for favors or silence when he needed them. This made it difficult for Nyberg to maintain his grip on the community as he used his wealth and power to enrich himself at the expense of others. As Jack continued his investigation, he discovered that Tom Malik had a personal vendetta against some prominent figures who had opposed him in the past. He believed that they had wronged him or hindered his success and saw them as threats to his reputation and fortune. This led to a series of violent clashes between Tom and those who stood in his way, including corrupt politicians, law enforcement officials, and even members of his own family. In one particularly dramatic confrontation, Jack witnessed Tom Malik holding a knife to the throat of a businessman who had threatened him with legal action over allegations that he had embezzled money from his trust. The businessman's fear was palpable as he begged for mercy, but Tom Malarkey stood resolute, refusing to back down. In a tense standoff, Jack found himself in a critical moment where the fate of the community hung in the balance. He could either risk bringing Nyberg into custody and exposing him to justice or choose to let him go without pressing charges against anyone involved in his crimes. As he considered these options, Jack realized that this was not just about uncovering financial fraud, but also about upholding a sense of moral right and protecting those who were vulnerable. In the end, Detective Jack made an unexpected decision. He decided to bring Tom Malik Nyberg into custody himself, determined to expose him for what he truly stood for. With his team's help, they searched the rancher's house and found evidence linking him to several counts of financial fraud and embezzlement. The arrest was a turning point in the story, as it brought attention to the corrupt practices that were rampant within Tom Malik Nyberg's network. It also served as a reminder for others who might have been tempted by his wealth and power to remain vigilant against those with an unfair advantage. As Detective Jack Ade his way back to the police department, he knew that justice had been delivered once again, but that it wouldn't be without its cost. He reflected on Tom Malik Nyberg's legacy as a symbol of greed and corruption, reminding all who lived in the community that protecting vulnerable individuals from harm is not an easy task. For Detective Jack, the fight against financial exploitation would continue long after he had closed his office doors for good. But even in this darkness, there was hope. As he looked out over the sprawling ranch where Tom Malik Nyberg's crimes had taken place, he knew that justice could still shine and inspire others to stand up for what is right. The global outline, asterisk in a tense scene, a ranch is surrounded by flashing police cars, and a woman accuses the rancher of hiding something. And Detective Jack made his way back to the police department, determined not to let this case go unresolved. He knew that the charges against Tom Malik Nyberg were serious, but he also had evidence linking him to financial fraud and embezzlement. The arrest was a turning point in the story, as it brought attention to the corrupt practices within his network. It served as a reminder for others who might have been tempted by his wealth and power to remain vigilant against those with an unfair advantage. As Detective Jack made his way back to the police department, he could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The case had already taken him through several intense days of investigation, gathering evidence that linked Tom to multiple financial fraud schemes. He knew that the truth was not just about catching a criminal, but also uncovering patterns and behaviors that would inform future investigations. As he stood in front of the ranch where Tom Malik Nyberg's South crimes had taken place, Detective Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness mixed with hope. The sprawling property surrounded by lush green pastures and rolling hills was not what it once was when Tom had purchased it decades ago. It had seen its fair share of struggles, droughts, wildfires, and years of neglect due to the corrupt practices within his network. Detective Jack surveyed the scene with a keen eye for detail. The ranch's walls were adorned with paintings that depicted scenes from life on the farm, each one showcasing Tom's love for nature and his commitment to preserving its beauty. However, as he looked closer, he noticed signs of neglect, broken windows, torn-up fences, and rusted gates. He approached the entrance of the ranch, where a group of employees huddled together under an awning, trying their best to hide from the curious onlookers. They appeared scared or apologetic, but Detective Jack knew that he had enough evidence to bring them in and charge Tom with his crimes. As Detective Jack made his way inside, he could hear the sounds of running water trickling into a well, indicating that some sort of irrigation system was still operational. He approached one of the employees who worked on the ranch's horses, asking if they had noticed any strange activity recently. And the employee hesitated for a moment before saying, "I'm sorry, sir, but I haven't seen anything out of the ordinary lately." Detective Jack continued his investigation, questioning each employee separately and searching their work areas for clues. He discovered that Tom had been using illegal means to acquire financial resources through various schemes, including a loan shark operation where he would prey on struggling farmers and ranchers. In as the evidence stacked up against Tom, Detective Jack knew that he was no longer just investigating an individual, but rather a symbol of greed and corruption within his network. He began to compile a detailed report with recommendations for further investigation into other corrupt individuals in the area, individuals who had benefited from Tom's unethical practices. In as he sat at his desk, digesting the information gathered during his visit to the ranch, Detective Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of duty and responsibility. He knew that the fight against financial exploitation was far from over, especially in rural communities like this one where there were often few options for economic development. With renewed determination, Detective Jack returned to his office, determined to continue his work with justice at hand. He made contact with law enforcement agents across the country and shared his findings, hoping that they would be able to identify other corrupt individuals within Tom's network and bring them in for prosecution. As he continued to investigate further into the financial fraud case against Tom Malik Nyberg, Detective Jack knew that this was just one step in a long journey of fighting corruption. He remained vigilant, constantly monitoring his surroundings and looking out for any signs of wrongdoing or unethical practices. With each passing day, the story continued to unfold, with new evidence emerging as Detective Jack uncovered more about Tom's corrupt activities and the impact they had on the lives of those around him. The case became a symbol not only of greed, but also of the importance of standing up against injustice and holding individuals accountable for their actions. As he looked out over the sprawling ranch where Tom Malik Nyberg's South crimes had taken place, Detective Jack knew that justice could still shine and inspire others to stand up for what is right. The case would continue to be a reminder of the importance of vigilance, persistence, and integrity in fighting corruption at all levels. In a dark and stormy night, Detective Jack stood outside the gates of Tom Malik Nyberg's ranch. The flashing lights from his police car illuminated the sprawling property, casting an ominous glow over everything in its path. As he approached, the sound of barking dogs echoed through the trees, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Inside the ranch house, a woman sat alone on a porch, her eyes fixed on Detective Jack with a cold and determined gaze. "You came for me," she said, her voice shaking slightly as she spoke. "What did you find?" Detective Jack stepped inside, his footsteps echoing through the empty halls. He walked past a group of employees who were huddled around the desk, their faces grim as they looked over several documents and files. "We've gathered evidence that suggests Tom Malik Nyberg is hiding something," he said, holding up a stack of papers in front of her. The woman's eyes widened in shock at what Detective Jack had revealed. "How do you know?" "It starts with the financial records," Detective Jack explained, scanning through the documents for any red flags or inconsistencies. Tom Malik Nyberg was listed as the owner and operator of several businesses, including a steakhouse and a construction company. As he continued to examine the evidence, Detective Jack noticed that Tom's business practices were not always ethical. He had been known to engage in illegal activities such as embezzlement, insider trading, and money laundering. The financial records showed that Tom had taken millions of dollars from his clients without their knowledge or consent. Despite these findings, Tom maintained a tight hold on the properties he owned and was able to keep most of his ill-gotten gains. However, Detective Jack couldn't shake off the feeling that there were more secrets hiding behind those walls. As he continued investigating, he uncovered a web of corruption within the company's ranks. He discovered that Tom had been embezzling funds from several employees who worked for him and was using their money to support his own lavish lifestyle. The evidence led him to one employee in particular, Sarah Thompson, a trusted member of Tom's team. Sarah was devastated when she found out about the corruption within her company. She had always believed that Tom was a good man with integrity, but now she saw a different side of him. He was using his position to enrich himself and others at the expense of those he worked for. Detective Jack knew that Sarah's case would be just one part of the larger investigation into Tom Nyberg's corrupt activities. As he continued to gather evidence and interview witnesses, he pieced together a picture of an empire built on greed and deceit. Tom had taken advantage of his position as a trusted business figure to enrich himself at the expense of others. With each new piece of information that Detective Jack uncovered, his determination only grew stronger. He knew that justice was finally coming for Tom Nyberg, but it would not be easy. The corrupt network he had built was vast and interconnected, with several key figures caught up in its web. As he sat across from Sarah Thompson during a tense interrogation session, she broke down in tears as she revealed more about the extent of her involvement in Tom's illegal activities. She explained that while some employees were aware of the corruption within the company, they had been hesitant to speak out due to fear for their own safety and livelihood. Detective Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of empathy towards Sarah. He knew how difficult it must have been for her to navigate through this treacherous path, with no one at the top willing to listen or take action against Tom's corrupt practices. With both Sarah and Tom now under investigation, Detective Jack knew that he had to act quickly if justice was to be served. The next day, he met with a group of local law enforcement officials who were also working on the case. Together, they gathered evidence from across town, including witness statements, surveillance footage, and financial records. In one final move, Detective Jack revealed his plan to take down Tom Nyberg's corrupt network once and for all. He outlined a detailed timeline and strategy that involved gathering more information about each key player in the system, identifying potential red flags, and coordinating with local authorities to seize control of the properties and assets associated with them. The townspeople were shocked by this revelation, but they knew that it was necessary if justice was going to be served. As Detective Jack led a team into Tom's ranch house, he could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he prepared for what lay ahead. In a dramatic showdown between the corrupt network and law enforcement officials, Tom Nyberg was brought down one by one. His empire crumbled before their eyes, leaving behind a trail of destruction that would take years to fully unravel. But even though justice had been served, Detective Jack knew that it wouldn't be easy for everyone involved in this case to move on from the darkness they had uncovered. The corrupt network was too deep and too interconnected, and there were still those who remained skeptical or resistant to change. As he left Tom's ranch house behind, Detective Jack couldn't shake off the feeling of emptiness that permeated his heart. He knew that justice would always be incomplete without bringing down corruption at all levels. But in the meantime, he was grateful for the chance to make a difference and help others do the same. The world turned on its head as Tom Nyberg's corrupt network was brought crumbling down before their eyes. But Detective Jack knew that the fight against injustice would continue, one step at a time, until every aspect of life was fair and just for all those who had been impacted by his crimes. Tense scene. A ranch is surrounded by flashing police cars, and a woman accuses the rancher of hiding something. Detective Jack, dressed in his black uniform and carrying a state-of-the-art forensic tool kit, stands outside Tom Nyberg's sprawling ranch house, watching as the scene unfolds. The once great estate had been transformed into an inferno after he was arrested for numerous criminal activities related to money laundering, drug trafficking, and embezzlement. The police cars swerved around him as they drove in, their sirens blaring, signaling that Tom's empire had finally come crashing down. He was facing the consequences of his actions, not just personally, but also professionally. The world knew about his reputation for corruption and his involvement in numerous criminal enterprises that left a trail of destruction in its wake. Detective Jack walked to the front door and opened it slowly, peering through the peephole at Tom sitting on a leather couch inside. He could see him staring back at him with resignation, but there was also something else lurking beneath the surface, an unyielding determination that refused to let anyone get away from his grasp. "Tom," Detective Jack said, his voice firm and unwavering. "I have reason to believe you're hiding something." Tom's eyes met Detective Jack's for a moment before he spoke. He looked at him with a mixture of surprise and suspicion, unsure if the evidence was solid enough or just another ploy by his enemies. "You've been caught," Tom said, his voice low and gravelly. "But I have nothing to hide." Detective Jack studied him carefully, taking note of the tattoos on his arms and the scars that marked his face from previous crimes. He knew how easy it was for people with criminal records like Tom's to slip through the cracks in justice. But he also had a gut feeling that something wasn't quite right. "Why?" "Oh, you've been involved in illegal activities for years," Detective Jack said, holding up a photo of one of Tom's most recent busts. "You're not just someone who got caught. You're part of a network that spans across multiple countries and has affected countless people." Tom raised an eyebrow at the photo, his expression unreadable as he studied it closely. "You don't believe me," he said finally, looking up at Detective Jack with cold eyes. "I know what's really going on here, Detective, and I'm not afraid to expose the truth." Detective Jack shook his head slowly, trying to assess Tom's argument. He knew that people like Tom were notorious for their resilience and cunning in the face of adversity, but he also couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something more than meets the eye. "You're lying," Detective Jack said finally, looking at Tom with a growing sense of conviction. "You have no idea what you've done to so many people, including me." Tom's eyes narrowed in surprise as he looked back at Detective Jack, his expression betraying little empathy or remorse for the pain and suffering that had been caused by his actions. "You may be right," Tom said finally, still holding on to a slim chance of convincing Detective Jack. "But you can't make an exception for me." Detective Jack regarded him with cold eyes once again, but this time there was also a sense of determination in them. He knew that he had to find the evidence and bring down Tom's network before they caused any more harm or destruction. "Then we'll have to do it together," Detective Jack said finally, his voice firm as he walked over to the police car parked outside. "We've got work to do." Tom watched him go without a word, then turned back to face the camera in the living room of his ranch house. He looked tired and defeated, but there was also a glimmer of hope in his eyes that refused to be extinguished. "You'll get your chance," Tom said finally, looking out at Detective Jack with determination etched on his features. "I've been fighting for justice all my life, and I won't let you bring it down." Detective Jack nodded, knowing that there was no going back once he had exposed the truth about Tom's network. He knew that their battle against corruption would be a long one, but he also knew that with determination and perseverance, they could make a real difference in people's lives. In that moment, Detective Jack closed his eyes and took a deep breath, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. The world around him was still burning after Tom's empire had crumbled before their eyes, but the truth would soon be exposed, and justice would prevail once again. Ranch House. Day the sun was setting over the vast expanse of Tom's ranch, casting long shadows on the dusty dirt floor and the rows of livestock grazing in a pattern that was almost hypnotic. Detective Jack walked into the living room, his eyes scanning the scene with an intensity that made everyone tense. Tom, Vio, I know I have to do this, but it's not just about me. It's about justice, about bringing down corruption and restoring trust in our community. And there's one man who stands at the center of everything. Tom Foster, the rancher with a dark past that threatens to destroy everything he has built. Tom sat on his favorite chair, staring out the window as Detective Jack walked towards him. Tom, he said, his voice firm and determined. We've got work to do. Tom, yeah, we have. Tom nodded, looking at Jack with a mixture of sadness and resolve. He had always been a man of principles, someone who believed in doing the right thing no matter how difficult it might be. But now that his empire was crumbling before their eyes, he couldn't shake the feeling that there were still people out there who would stop at nothing to protect their own interests. Detective Jack stepped into the living room and surveyed Tom's ranch from every angle. The sprawling property was a marvel of engineering and design, but it also contained secrets and dark corners that few knew about. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of lengths Tom had gone to keep his network hidden, even as he basked in the glory of his success. As Jack continued to examine the ranch, he noticed something strange. The windows were covered with a thick layer of dust that obscured their view outside. It was like someone had intentionally left behind evidence, proof that Tom's operations went on undetected for months, if not years. Detective Jack pulled out his phone and called the police to file an investigation into Tom's network. As he spoke to them over the phone, he could hear a sense of urgency in their voices as they scrambled to gather evidence and interview witnesses. Tom, I don't know what you're thinking, Detective, Tom said, his voice low and tense. But I'm telling you now, there's something up here that we need to address. Detective Jack listened intently, nodding slowly in agreement before continuing. You see, the reason why the windows are covered with dust is because our team has been working on a top-secret project that involves accessing restricted areas of the ranch. We've installed cameras and surveillance systems throughout the property, including hidden rooms and secret compartments. Tom, that's not true. Tom protested, his voice rising in anger. We're doing this for safety, to protect ourselves from those who would harm us or our business. Detective Jack shook his head firmly. You have no idea what we're dealing with, he said, his tone firm but empathetic. Tom Foster has been involved in illegal activities for years, and the truth about his network is slowly starting to surface. We know that at least one of his employees was using their access to our facilities to steal from us or disrupt our operations. Tom, you can't make this up, Tom snarled, feeling a cold sense of betrayal wash over him as he realized just how much evidence had been compromised in the search for answers. I have no idea who could be capable of doing something like that, let alone have access to my network and our operations. Detective Jack hesitated before speaking again. You're right, he said softly, his voice laced with concern. And we need more information than just a few scattered pieces of evidence. We'll need to work together to uncover the full extent of Tom's network, from its inception to its end. Tom, fine. Tom sighed, trying to keep up the facade of determination. He knew that he had no choice but to trust his instincts and rely on Jack's expertise in this case. As they continued their investigation, Detective Jack pieced together a timeline of events that revealed a web of corruption and deceit at the heart of Tom's empire. They discovered evidence of illegal activities ranging from money laundering to corporate espionage, all carried out by one key figure, an employee who had been working for Tom since he took over as the rancher. With this information in hand, Detective Jack knew that they were getting closer to discovering the truth about Tom Foster's network and his involvement with criminal activity. But at what cost? Would justice prevail in this case, or would Tom continue to evade capture and wreak havoc on their community? As tensions mounted and the stakes grew higher, the team worked tirelessly to gather more evidence and build a strong case against Tom's network. They faced numerous obstacles along the way, from corrupt officials and business partners who were willing to betray them at any cost, to rival law enforcement agencies that threatened to disrupt their investigation. But through it all, Detective Jack remained steadfast in his commitment to bringing down corruption and restoring trust in our community. He knew that justice was not only about punishing those responsible for criminal activity, but also about rebuilding the reputation of a man who had been brought low by his own actions. As they continued their search for answers, Tom Foster's network began to unravel at an alarming rate. The evidence against him grew stronger and more convincing, with each new revelation adding depth to the case and highlighting the extent of the corruption that he had hidden from everyone else. In a dramatic climax, Detective Jack finally broke through the last layer of secrecy, revealing the truth about Tom's network, all too late for some who had trusted him. The raid on his ranch was swift and brutal, with the police storming the building in search of anyone involved in illegal activities or attempting to flee. As they searched for Tom, Detective Jack realized that justice would not be served until he could bring down everyone responsible for this dark chapter in our community's history. But even as they faced off against a powerful enemy, they knew that their determination and unwavering commitment to the truth would ensure that justice was finally done and that Tom Foster would pay the ultimate price for his crimes. The world around them was still burning after Tom's empire had crumbled before their eyes. But in this moment, there was a sense of hope that refused to be extinguished. The truth about Tom Foster's network would soon be exposed, and justice would prevail once again, one step at a time towards building a better future for all those who had been affected by his actions. Tom. 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 Oh, Tom. 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 Oh. 1200. Oh. Tom. Oh. In a tense scene, the ranch in question was surrounded by flashing police cars and the once majestic buildings of Tom Foster's sprawling empire. The scent of burning wood hung thick in the air as Detective Jack led his team into the heart of the compound, determined to expose the truth about Tom's dark past. As they made their way through the rugged terrain, Detective Jack couldn't shake off a feeling that something was amiss. The raid had been swift and brutal, with police dogs barking at every sound in the area as they searched for anyone involved in illegal activities or attempting to flee. As they delved deeper into Tom's past, it became clear that his empire had grown unchecked due to a combination of greed, corruption, and political maneuvering. As Detective Jack led his team through the dusty interior of the ranch, he couldn't help but notice the eerie silence around him. The once bustling facility was now eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustle of papers or the distant sounds of crickets chirping in the background. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding as they searched through cabinets and drawers, hoping to find any evidence that would shed light on Tom's activities. After hours of fruitless searching, Detective Jack decided it was time for them to turn to more unconventional tactics. He ordered his team to dig up tombs deep within the compound, their mission being to uncover hidden caches or artifacts that might reveal information about Tom's criminal network and its operation. The search turned out to be a daunting task as the ranch was adorned with elaborate tombstones dating back several centuries, each one more intricate than the last. The team spent days digging through dusty graves, searching for any sign of incriminating evidence. But despite their efforts, they found nothing that seemed promising. As night fell over the compound, Detective Jack and his team made a final hasty attempt to uncover some remaining clues. They scoured through Tom's personal documents, hoping to find any trace of financial transactions or other documentation that would reveal his connection to illegal activities. But as they dug deeper into the archives, they stumbled upon a series of confidential letters that detailed how Tom had acquired millions of dollars in wealth and power over the years. The letters revealed a web of lies, deceit, and corruption that spanned across state lines and even beyond. It was clear that Tom Foster's empire was built on a foundation of illegal activities and cunning manipulation, with no regard for the consequences or the well-being of those who worked behind the scenes to bring him down. As Detective Jack read through the letters, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anger and betrayal wash over him. The people of our community had been taken advantage of by this ruthless criminal mastermind, and justice was finally coming for them all. But as they closed out the final pages of Tom's correspondence, they knew that it wouldn't be easy. Tom Foster was known to have connections throughout several states, and his empire extended far beyond what he could control with just a few well-planned moves. The police would need to work closely with local law enforcement agencies and other powerful individuals in order to bring down his network of corrupt officials and criminal underworld figures. As Detective Jack sat back in the shadows, reflecting on the events that had transpired over the past days, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope for our community. The truth about Tom's empire would soon be exposed, and justice would finally prevail once again, one step at a time towards building a better future for all those who had been affected by his actions. But as they left the compound that day, Detective Jack knew that it wouldn't be easy. There were countless obstacles to overcome, including powerful forces determined not to see justice served and corrupt officials who would do everything in their power to maintain their hold on power. In the end, only through a combination of determination, intelligence gathering, and unconventional tactics could Tom Foster's empire finally fall and bring about the changes needed for our community to thrive once again. As Detective Jack made his way out into the night, he knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey towards justice, one step at a time towards building a better future for all those who had been affected by Tom's actions. In a tense scene, the ranch in question is surrounded by flashing police cars and the once majestic buildings of Tom Foster's sprawling empire. The scent of burning wood hangs thick in the air as Detective Jack leads his team into the heart of the compound, determined to expose the truth about Tom's dark past. As they made their way through the rugged terrain, Detective Jack couldn't shake off a feeling that something was amiss. The raid had been swift and brutal, with police dogs barking at every sound in the area as they searched for anyone involved in illegal activities or attempting to flee. As they delved deeper into Tom's past, it became clear that his empire had grown unchecked due to a combination of greed, corruption, and political maneuvering. As Detective Jack led his team through the dusty interior of the ranch, he couldn't help but notice the eerie silence around him. The once bustling facility was now eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustle of papers or the distant sounds of crickets chirping in the background. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding as they searched through cabinets and drawers, hoping to find any evidence that would shed light on Tom's activities. After hours of fruitless searching, Detective Jack decided it was time for them to turn to more unconventional tactics. He ordered his team to dig up tombs deep within the compound, their mission being to uncover hidden caches or artifacts that might reveal information about Tom's criminal network and its operation. The search turned out to be a daunting task as the ranch was adorned with elaborate tombstones dating back several centuries, each one more intricate than the last. The team spent days digging through dusty graves, searching for any sign of incriminating evidence. But despite their efforts, they found nothing that seemed promising. As night fell over the compound, Detective Jack and his team made a final hasty attempt to uncover some remaining clues. They scoured through Tom's personal documents, hoping to find any trace of financial transactions or other documentation that would reveal his connection to illegal activities. But as they dug deeper into the archives, they stumbled upon a series of confidential letters that detailed how Tom had acquired millions of dollars in wealth and power over the years. The letters revealed a web of lies, deceit, and corruption that spanned across state lines and even beyond. It was clear that Tom Foster's empire was built on a foundation of illegal activities and cunning manipulation, with no regard for the consequences or the well-being of those who worked behind the scenes to bring him down. As Detective Jack read through the letters, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anger and betrayal wash over him. The people of our community had been taken advantage of by this ruthless criminal mastermind, and justice was finally coming for them all. But as they closed out the final pages of Tom's correspondence, they knew that it wouldn't be easy. Tom Foster was known to have connections throughout several states, and his empire extended far beyond what he could control with just a few well-planned moves. The police would need to work closely with local law enforcement agencies and other powerful individuals in order to bring down his network of corrupt officials and criminal underworld figures. As Detective Jack sat back in the shadows, reflecting on the events that had transpired over the past days, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope for our community. The truth about Tom's empire would soon be exposed, and justice was finally prevail once again, one step at a time towards building a better future for all those who have been affected by his actions. But as they left the compound that day, Detective Jack knew that it wouldn't be easy. There were countless obstacles to overcome, including powerful forces determined, and not to see justice served and corrupt officials who would do everything in their power to maintain their hold on power. In the end, only through a combination of determination, intelligence gathering, and unconventional tactics could Tom Foster's empire finally fall and bring about the changes needed for our community to thrive once again. As Detective Jack made his way out into the night, he knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey towards justice, one step at a time towards building a better future for all those who have been affected by Tom's actions. As Detective Jack made his way out into the night, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope for our community. The truth about Tom's empire would soon be exposed, and justice was finally prevail once again, one step at a time towards building a better future for all those who have been affected by his actions. He had spent weeks digging through the evidence and interviewing witnesses, piecing together clues that pointed to Tom Foster's involvement in multiple illegal activities. It seemed like he had become an enigma, with no apparent motive or connection to any of our community's crimes. But as they delved deeper into his past, Detective Jack began to uncover a web of corruption and criminal activity that spanned across several states. The first suspect was Tom's business partner, Sarah Thompson, who had been running the company from behind the scenes for years without anyone knowing her true identity or involvement in any illegal activities. When she stumbled upon evidence linking her to several thefts and robberies, Detective Jack knew he needed to take action against her before it was too late. As they conducted a search of Sarah's home, they discovered an elaborate underground network of tunnels that connected various businesses and criminal organizations across the state. The tunnels were filled with stolen goods, cash, and confidential documents, all interconnected by encrypted communication channels. The team managed to track down several key members of this network, including Tom himself, his business partner, a hacker who had been hired by him, and a hitman who specialized in eliminating anyone who stood in the way of their operations. With each piece of information they gathered, Detective Jack knew that he was getting closer to the truth about Tom's empire. But as the team delved deeper into the network, they stumbled upon something even more disturbing: evidence of human trafficking and forced labor practices within some of the businesses involved. They discovered that Tom had been using his influence over local politicians and business leaders to secure contracts for these illegal activities, leaving a trail of victims in their wake. As Detective Jack continued to piece together the truth about Tom's empire, he knew that they were facing an uphill battle against powerful forces determined not to see justice served. The corrupt officials who worked closely with Tom had been protecting his interests at all costs, and would stop at nothing to maintain their hold on power. They were willing to do whatever it took to keep their secrets hidden from the public eye, including resorting to violence. In a desperate attempt to bring down Tom's empire and expose his crimes, Detective Jack hired a team of rogue hackers who had connections with some of the most powerful players in our community. Together, they set up a cyber attack on one of Tom's main business partners' servers, causing massive damage and disrupting their operations for hours. As they worked to recover from the impact of the attack, they discovered that Sarah was also involved in this network of corruption and human trafficking, using her position as an employee at one of the businesses she had managed. With evidence pointing to both Tom and Sarah's involvement in these crimes, Detective Jack knew he had a real target on his back. As they raced against time to gather more information about Sarah's role in the network and bring her down, they discovered that there was much more to her than meets the eye. She had been using her connections with influential figures in our community as leverage for her own gain, manipulating them at every turn to keep Tom under control. With each new revelation, Detective Jack knew that he needed a different approach if he wanted to bring down Sarah and expose Tom's empire once and for all. He decided to use his detective skills to gather intel. Legends on Sarah from multiple sources, including anonymous tipsters who had seen her in the company with Tom or business partners who had spoken about their involvement. He also reached out to local law enforcement agencies, asking them to help him build a case against Sarah and bring her to justice. They were hesitant at first, knowing that she was one of the most powerful figures in our community and could use her influence to silence anyone who threatened to expose her secrets. But as Detective Jack explained his investigation and presented evidence connecting Sarah with Tom's empire and human trafficking crimes, they began to see the potential for cooperation. With their combined expertise and resources, they were able to build a case that not only implicated Sarah, but also exposed several other key players in the network of corruption. In a dramatic showdown, Detective Jack confronted Sarah face-to-face at her home, demanding an explanation for her role in Tom's empire and the human trafficking crimes she had facilitated. She refused to admit any wrongdoing, citing her innocence and claiming that everything was just a misunderstanding. As the tension mounted, Detective Jack knew that this would be a close call. But with their combined evidence and determination, they were able to overcome Sarah's objections and gather enough information to build a strong case against her for conspiracy and human trafficking crimes. In a dramatic courtroom hearing, Sarah was found guilty of numerous charges, including racketeering, theft, and forced labor practices. She was sentenced to several years in prison, along with the members of her network who had been linked to her crimes. With the trial over, Detective Jack breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that justice had finally been served for our community. Tom Foster's empire would now be dismantled, and his criminal activities exposed once again. But more importantly, it was about building a better future for all those who had been affected by his actions, starting with the victims whose lives were forever changed. As they left the compound that day, Detective Jack knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey towards justice, one step at a time towards rebuilding our community and creating a brighter tomorrow. But he also knew that there would be challenges along the way, from corrupt officials who would do everything in their power to maintain their hold on power to rogue hackers who would use any means necessary to bring down his empire. But with determination, intelligence gathering, and unconventional tactics at his fingertips, Detective Jack was ready to face whatever came his way. And as they made their way out into the night, he knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in our community's journey towards justice, one step at a time towards building a better future for all those who have been affected by Thomas' actions. In a bustling ranch town, nestled in the heart of an idyllic countryside, life was as quiet and peaceful as ever. But that all changed when the local police department received word from their sources about a mysterious figure who had been making headlines across the region. Tom Riddle, a notorious serial killer known for his cold-blooded tactics and twisted sense of justice. Detective Jack, an experienced detective with a reputation for solving high-profile cases, was assigned to investigate Tom's latest spree. As he arrived at the ranch where the woman accused him of hiding something, he couldn't shake off the feeling that there were more secrets lurking beneath his seemingly serene facade. The victim in question had been found dead on the premises, and her body bore a deep cut across her neck with a distinct symbol etched onto it. As Jack investigated further, he discovered that the woman was just one of many victims who had fallen victim to Tom's twisted mindset. The evidence pointed towards him as the prime suspect in several gruesome murders over the past few months, each scene leaving an indelible mark on his victims' lives. Detective Jack knew that this was no ordinary case. It was a fight against a monster lurking within our community's shadows, one with a vendetta for justice that went beyond simply punishing those responsible. But he also recognized that getting to the bottom of Tom's crimes would require unconventional tactics and an unwavering commitment to staying one step ahead. As Jack delved deeper into his investigation, he encountered resistance from both corrupt officials who sought to maintain their power over the law enforcement agency and rogue hackers who were determined to bring down his empire. With each challenge that they faced, Detective Jack grew more desperate to uncover Tom's secrets before it was too late. It wasn't just a case of one man against an entire organization. It was a battle between two opposing forces with vastly different goals. One group wanted to restore order and peace in the community, while another sought to exploit its vulnerabilities for their own gain. As Jack pieced together clues from various sources, he began to realize that Tom's crimes were not just limited to his personal vendetta, but had broader implications on the fabric of society. The killer targeted vulnerable individuals who couldn't afford the cost of an intervention and whose lives would be forever altered by the tragedy they faced. He was a twisted mind with a skewed perception of justice, using his victims as pawns in his carefully crafted web of manipulation and deceit. Detective Jack knew that he had to break down this facade if he wanted to bring Tom's reign of terror to an end. As he delved deeper into Tom's past, Jack uncovered the dark secret behind his rise to power, a connection with a powerful organization known as the Order, whose members were involved in illegal activities and trade deals. The group had been using their influence to manipulate public opinion and cover up its criminal activities, ensuring that no one would dare challenge them or bring down their empire. Detective Jack realized that the only way he could stop Tom was to expose this dark organization's secrets, dismantle it from within, and restore a sense of justice and trust in our community. He knew that it wouldn't be an easy task, but with his determination and resourcefulness at its core, he would do everything in his power to bring down the Order and bring peace back to the ranch town. As Jack made his way through the complex web of intrigue and danger that lay ahead, he encountered a variety of obstacles and challenges. But with each obstacle overcome, he became more convinced that Tom's reign of terror was coming to an end. And as they worked towards their ultimate goal, Detective Jack knew that this would be just one step in a long journey towards building a brighter future for all those who had been affected by Tom's actions. In the end, justice triumphed over evil and brought closure to many lives forever altered by Tom Riddle's twisted mindset. The ranch town became a safer place once again, with public opinion shifting against the cult of violence that Tom represented. Detective Jack left the scene, knowing that he had not only solved one case, but also helped to restore trust in our community and create a brighter tomorrow for all who live there. The story of Tom Riddle is just another chapter in the ongoing battle between good and evil, where justice triumphed over darkness once again. And as Detective Jack continued his pursuit of truth and accountability, he knew that it was only by staying one step ahead that he could ensure that our community remained safe and free from the horrors of a twisted mindset like Tom's. In a small ranch town nestled in the heart of Texas, the tension was palpable as Detective Jack arrived at the scene. The once bustling community had become quiet and somber, with everyone aware that their beloved rancher, Tom Riddle, might have been involved in some shady dealings. As he made his way to the property where the woman accusing him of hiding something lay on a dirt road, Jack couldn't shake off the feeling that this was only the beginning. As they approached, Detective Jack could see that the surrounding area had changed dramatically since Tom's reign as leader of the cult known as the Dark Ones. The once serene landscape now displayed signs of violence and desperation. Law enforcement officers patrolled the streets in a constant state of alert, their presence marked by flashing red lights and loud sirens piercing through the night. Detective Jack made his way inside the ranch's gates, where he encountered an array of chaos unfolding before him. The once pristine grounds were now littered with overturned vehicles, broken windows, and destruction that suggested Tom had been involved in a violent confrontation. In one corner of the property stood an old oak tree that was heavily guarded by armed men. As Jack surveyed the scene, he couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The cult leader's twisted beliefs had seeped into every aspect of life within the town, and his followers were willing to do whatever it took to maintain their control over the community. It seemed that justice was not on Tom Riddle's side anymore. Detective Jack made his way towards where he believed the woman accusing him might be hiding, a small shed nestled in one corner of the ranch property. The door creaked open as Detective Jack walked inside, and he could hear the sound of footsteps echoing through the room. As he approached the woman, she stood before him with her eyes fixed on his face. "I can't believe it," the woman said, gasping for breath as she spoke. "Tom Riddle was hiding something from us all." Detective Jack nodded in understanding and motioned towards a nearby table where they had gathered earlier. The woman sat down across from him, tears streaming down her face. "He's been manipulating everyone around here," she continued. "We've never really understood what he wanted with the ranch, but now it seems clear that his ultimate goal is to control our lives." Detective Jack listened intently as the woman recounted Tom's twisted beliefs and actions towards their community. He knew from her words that justice was not on Tom Riddle's side anymore, and this realization sent a chill down his spine. "Who are you?" Detective Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper as he approached the woman.